Hello and welcome. Are you on a quest for success and happiness, searching far and wide for the key to unlock your potential? What if I told you that the key was right in front of you all along, hidden in plain sight? In the book Acres of Diamonds, I share a story that will change the way you think about success and the pursuit of wealth. I challenge you to look within yourself and your own community to find the opportunities that exist all around you. Join us as we journey together to discover the wealth that lies in our own backyards and learn how to transform our lives and achieve the success we seek. Let's embark on this transformative journey together. In the year 1843, the world was introduced to a man who would go on to drastically alter the lives of millions of people. Henry David Thoreau was the name of this man. At the time, he was known by the name Russell Herman Conwell. After working as a lawyer for a while, he moved on to become the editor of a newspaper, and after that, he joined the ministry. An occurrence that happened during the time that he was serving in the church would turn out to be the impetus for the significant changes that would follow, not just for him, but also for a great number of other people. One day, a group of young people went to Dr. Conwell's church and asked him if he would be willing to instruct them in subjects that were typically taught at the college level. He assured them that he would be more than delighted to comply with their request. They were all resolute in their pursuit of a college education, but they lacked the resources necessary to make it happen financially. He requested that they allow him some time to think about it, and he asked that they check in with him in a few days to see how things were going. After they had left, Dr. Conwell's mind began to wander, and he got an idea as a result. He puzzled about the following question: why is it that there can't be a decent school that takes kids from low-income households who are equally deserving? In a very short period of time, the idea completely consumed him. If you ask me, I don't see why not. It was a project that demanded an individual's whole attention as well as 100% of their efforts from that individual. Dr. Conwell raised many $million, virtually single-handedly, and utilized those monies to create Temple University, which is currently considered to be one of the most distinguished educational institutions in the United States. He accomplished this goal by giving over 6,000 lectures around the country, and in each and every one of those talks, he presented a tale that he called Acres of Diamonds. Because of this, he was able to collect the required sums. The audience members experienced the same thing that he did when they heard the story, since it was an authentic event that had a huge influence on him. Large sums of money, which he required for the construction of the establishment, started to come into his possession. The account of the event was given from the point of view of an African farmer who said that he had spoken to other African farmers who claimed to have earned millions of dollars by unearthing diamond mines. The farmer who provided the account was located in Africa. The farmer couldn't control his excitement after hearing these tales, and he couldn't wait to sell his property and begin looking for diamonds on his own. He was so enthusiastic that he couldn't even contain his enthusiasm. As a consequence of this, he made the decision to sell the farm and spend the remainder of his life adventuring throughout Africa in the pursuit of the dazzling diamonds that demanded such high prices on the markets of the world. But he was never able to do what he set out to do. According to the myth, he had reached the end of his rope and was experiencing feelings of sadness when he chose to end his life by taking his own life by leaping into a river and drowning himself. Back at the ranch or farm, depending on the circumstances, the individual who had acquired the land was in the midst of across the little creek that was situated on the property at this time. It seemed as if the source of the tremendous flash of light, which was colored blue and red, was the bottom of the stream. He got down on his knees, picked up the stone, and saw that it was rather a substantial rock. After giving it some thought for a bit, he decided to put the rock he was examining on the mantel of his fireplace, since it was such an interesting wonder. After a few weeks had passed, a visitor who was staying at his residence picked up the stone, carefully studied it, and weighed it in his hand. At that moment, he was on the edge of passing out. He explained to the farmer just what it was that he had found via their conversation. The visitor asked the farmer whether he thought it was a piece of crystal, and the farmer responded with a no, to the visitor's question. The farmer was then told by the visitor that he had discovered one of the largest diamonds that had ever been uncovered in his field. The farmer had a hard time believing that it was indeed the case. He told the other individual that his creek was loaded with stones much like that, but he anticipated that the stones in his creek would not be as large as the one that was displayed on the mantel. On the other hand, there were a great many of them strewn over the bottom of the stream. When the first farmer looked for a diamond mine, he sold his land to fund his search. When he located the mine, it turned out to be the most productive diamond mine on the whole African continent. It goes without saying that the land he sold was the property he had sold. The first farmer had unencumbered possession of acres worth of diamonds, but he made the decision to sell them for very little to nothing, so that he could look for diamonds in other places. The takeaway from this story is crystal clear. All of the first farmer's wildest dreams could have come true if only he had taken the time to study and prepare himself, to learn what diamonds looked like in their rough state. Additionally, given that he already owned a piece of property on the African continent, if he had thoroughly explored the property he owned before looking elsewhere, he would have had a much better chance of finding diamonds. This is the lesson that can be learned from this story. The idea that every one of us is, now at this very moment, standing in the middle of our very own acres of diamonds is the component of this story that had such a significant and profound effect not just on Dr. Conwell, but also on millions of other individuals all around the world. If only we had the vision and patience to evaluate the job in which we are now engaged, as well as ourselves, in a sensible and effective manner, we would generally find the riches that we are looking for, whether they are financial, intangible, or both. If only we had the insight and patience, if only we had the maturity and persistence to thoughtfully and thoroughly investigate the task in which we are now involved, as well as ourselves, we would be far more equipped to do so. Before we go looking for what we think are better pastures, let's make sure that the one we're already in isn't just as green, or maybe even greener than the one we're going after. Only then will we know whether or not it's worth leaving the one we're already in for the one we're pursuing after. It has been observed that if another person's pasture seems greener than ours does, it is highly possible that it is getting higher care than ours does. This is a very plausible explanation for the difference. This is an assumption that may be made with some justification. In addition to that, there are other persons inspecting our pastures at the same time that we are looking at the pastures of other people. There are very few things in the world that, in my view, are more depressing than the individual who spends his life hopping from one thing to another, constantly hunting for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but never sticking with one thing long enough to achieve it. No matter what it is that you have set out to do, there is a good chance that the means by which you might accomplish it reside inside the activity that you are now partaking in. It wasn't until a valiant farmer was completely paralyzed by polio and was compelled to dive deep into the vast resources of his mind that he got the idea to create really excellent beef products on his farm. Before this, the farmer had not the slightest idea that such a thing was even possible. Because of this motivation, one of the meatpacking enterprises that is now considered to be among the most successful in the country was founded. In addition to that, his land had acres upon acres of diamond mines. The reason for this is that he had never had to search for anything of that kind before. The most precious thing you own is undoubtedly your intelligence. You shouldn't go on to anything else until you've given this the appropriate amount of time to thoroughly study the prospects that are available in what it is that you're doing right now. When you were initially starting out, I think there were undoubtedly good reasons for you to pursue the field of work that you are now doing. And I am saying this because of that belief. If there weren't, and if you're not happy with the line of work that you're now in, then maybe it's time to conduct some serious investigation into alternative lines of employment. If there weren't, then there weren't any. After thoroughly exploring all of the opportunities available within one's own pasture, one need to be prepared to move on to other pastures, just like Dr. Russell Conwell did throughout the course of his life. As I was saying before, Dr. Conwell began his career as a lawyer, then went on to become a newspaper editor, and then found his true calling when he became a priest and the founder of a prominent institution. These are just a few of his many careers. The story of Stu Leonard, a laborer from Norwalk, Connecticut, who uncovered acres worth of diamonds hidden in his work, is widely regarded as one of the most dramatic examples of such a find. The beginning of Stu Leonard's professional life saw him working as a delivery man on a dairy route. As he went from place to place, he began to think about all of the dairy-related products that his customers really needed, and started to formulate strategies for how he might sell them to them. He bought an existing dairy with a very little down payment, and after putting in a lot of hard work, he began establishing a business around the dairy he had bought. Instead, did not destroy the operational dairy, which acted as the nerve hub of his firm, and instead ringed it with glass so that customers could view the manufacturing process. This allowed him to keep his business competitive, and he began adding more objects to his collection as he went along. Today, his dairy business is the largest in the world, and he trades in all manner of foods and items linked to the food industry. Customers travel from all over the surrounding area to conduct their shopping at Stu Leonard's world's largest dairy store. Stu Leonard's is known for having the largest selection of dairy products in the world. They have a positive opinion of it, and he has a good opinion of them. Customers who are too old or unwell to make the journey to Stu Leonard's business on their own are picked up by buses provided by Stu Leonard and brought there. These clients are either too elderly or too fragile to be served. What started off as a straightforward delivery route ultimately developed into a multi-million-dollar business for him. Despite the presence of the diamonds, Stu Leonard made the most out of the circumstances that he was in. Every single field of employment has at the very least one of these opportunities hidden away somewhere inside it. The opportunities are there at this very now, and they are pleading to be used in some manner. On the other hand, they are unable to communicate with us, and they cannot print any signs for us to read. The onus of accountability rests squarely on our shoulders, and it is incumbent upon us to examine the work that we have produced with the imaginative perspective of artists. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a French philosopher, once made the observation that it is our job as men and women to continue as if there are no bounds to our potential. We are equal participants in the creative process and co-creators of our work. One of the guys I know in Arizona got his start by operating a convenience store, which later evolved into a gas station. One day he was sitting at his desk and staring out the window as one of his more junior workers filled the gas tank of a client. From where he was sitting at his desk, he had a good view of what was going on. He was hanging about waiting for the job to be finished, and he kept a watchful eye on the customer the whole time. It dawned on him all of a sudden that the other person most likely had cash on him, and that there were undoubtedly things that he needed or wanted that he would be ready to pay for, given that those products were displayed in a way that made it simple for him to observe them. As a result, he began to offer supplementary items, such as fishing gear, followed by fishing permits, hunting equipment, camping gear, rifles, shotguns, ammunition, and hunting licenses. At some point in time, he decided to broaden the scope of his company to include the sale of weapons. He came into a terrific company that manufactured aluminum fishing boats and trailers. He began amassing ownership of the homes in the neighborhood that were immediately next to him. After that, he set up a department just for auto parts and accessories. He had always offered cool soft drinks and sweets, but now he also kept an amazing line of chocolates in a refrigerated case. Previously, he had only sold candy and beverages that were cold. In addition to the candies and drinks that were accessible at all times, this was also offered. Soon after that, he outsold every other person in the state combined in terms of the quantity of chocolates that he sold. His customers had access to hundreds of additional products that they could buy from him while they waited for their automobiles to be fixed. While they waited, their vehicles were being repaired. Because of all of these circumstances, it was certain that the overwhelming majority of individuals in the neighborhood who were in need of gasoline would go to his station. He was successful in selling more gasoline. Checks were deposited into customer accounts by him beginning on Fridays. The unexpected good fortune kept becoming larger and larger. The first step in the process was taken when a person with a human brain saw a customer who was standing about with money in his pockets but had nothing to spend it on. This sparked the idea that all of this might be done better. This consumer was completely clueless about what to do with his cash. Others would have lived and died with the small petrol station, and in fact they do. Others would have lived and died with the little gas station. My friend saw several diamonds in the rough. Both Stu Leonard in Connecticut and my friend in Arizona place a strong emphasis on delivering first-rate service to their respective clientele. Serve the customer, and more precisely, serve the customer in a way that is superior to how anybody else is presently serving the customer. The passage that is presented here is taken from the official company policy, which can be seen clearly displayed at Stu Leonard's store for the benefit of all customers. This is how it should read. Rule number 1, the client is almost always correct. Rule 2 states that you should review Rule 1 in the event that the customer is ever in the right. When they see a wealthy customer drive up to the station, many individuals who work at service stations have the thought cross their minds, I ought to be in his business. Not so. If only we would stop playing copycat with one another and start thinking creatively. Start thinking in new areas. There is just as much opportunity in one firm as there is in another one. I can tell you that it is attainable. We are the ones that are responsible for tracking it down. Taking a step back sometimes and analyzing your work from the vantage point of someone who is not directly involved may be quite beneficial. Someone who isn't familiar with him very well would question, why does he act in that manner? Has he given any thought to the fact that what he is producing may perhaps be built upon or developed upon itself in the future? If you are happy with the way things are now going, then you should by all means refrain from making any changes to the situation. Nevertheless, it could be a lot of fun to look for treasures that are hidden both inside ourselves and within our job. We never give ourselves the chance to get jaded or complacent, and we never allow ourselves to settle into a pattern. It is brought to our attention that a rut is, in essence, nothing more than a tomb that has had its ends kicked out of it.